The golden throne room of the Zephyrian flagship stretched out like a cathedral made of metal and light. Emperor Vexithul sat on his massive chair, his purple skin gleaming under the bright lights. Around him, dozens of his top military officers stood in perfect rows. Their uniforms were spotless, their faces serious. Today was an important day. "Bring me the report on the humans," the Emperor said. His voice echoed through the huge room. General Kextar stepped forward and bowed low. He held a glowing tablet in his clawed hands. "Your Majesty, our scouts have finished studying the human species. They are very primitive. They have only spread to a few planets around their home star. Their technology is basic. Their weapons are weak." The Emperor nodded slowly. This was good news. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 42 different species over the past 1,000 years. Each time it had been easy. Most species surrendered as soon as they saw the Empire's mighty fleet. Those who tried to fight lasted only a few days. "How many ships do they have?" asked Admiral Dexmore, the Emperor's top military commander. "Less than 300, Your Majesty," General Kextar replied. "Most are small patrol ships or cargo vessels. They have no real warships like ours." The Emperor smiled. His sharp teeth glinted in the light. The Zephyrian fleet had over 10,000 ships. Their smallest warship could destroy an entire human city. Their largest ships could crack planets in half. "Perfect," the Emperor said. "Send them the usual message. Give them 3 days to surrender. When they refuse, we will crush them quickly and move on to the next system." The message was sent across space using the Empire's fastest communication system. It would reach the humans in just a few hours. The Emperor and his officers were already planning their victory celebration. Meanwhile, millions of miles away, Admiral Kyle Harper was having a quiet morning at Luna Station. He sat in his small office, drinking coffee and reading reports from the outer colonies. Luna Station orbited Earth's moon and served as the headquarters for the United Earth Defense Force. It was not a fancy place. The walls were plain metal, and the furniture was simple and practical. Harper was 50 years old with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes. He had been in the military for 30 years, but he had never fought in a real war. Humans had been at peace for over a century. The biggest excitement in his job was usually dealing with pirates or rescue missions. His assistant, Lieutenant Betty Collins, walked into his office carrying a datapad. She looked confused. "Sir, we just received a strange message from deep space," she said. "It's from something called the Zephyrian Galactic Empire." Harper raised an eyebrow. "Never heard of them. What do they want?" "Well, sir, they say they want us to surrender." Harper nearly choked on his coffee. "Surrender? To who?" Betty handed him the datapad. Harper read the message slowly. His eyes got wider with each line. "To the primitive species known as humans," the message began. "The mighty Zephyrian Empire has decided to add your worlds to our domain. You have 72 standard hours to surrender completely. All humans will become servants of the Empire. Your military will be disbanded. Your leaders will be executed. If you refuse, we will destroy your civilization and take your worlds by force. This is your only warning." Harper stared at the message for a long moment. Then he started to chuckle. The chuckle became a laugh. The laugh became uncontrollable laughter. He doubled over in his chair, tears streaming down his face. "Sir, are you okay?" Betty asked, looking worried. Harper tried to speak but could only gasp between fits of laughter. He wiped his eyes and tried to compose himself, but every time he looked at the message again, he burst into fresh laughter. "They want us to surrender," he managed to say between giggles. "Betty, they actually think we're going to surrender." Betty looked at the message again. "Should I alert the other commanders, sir?" "Oh yes," Harper said, still chuckling. "But first, let's send these folks a reply." Harper activated his communication system. He set it to broadcast to all human colonies and back to the Zephyrian Empire. His face appeared on screens across human space and on the Emperor's flagship. "Hello there," Harper said, still wiping tears from his eyes. "Sorry about that. We thought your message was some kind of joke. You're actually serious about this whole surrender thing?" He paused to control another fit of giggles. "Look, I don't know who you people are or where you come from, But you clearly haven't done your homework about humans. We don't really do the whole surrendering thing. It's just not our style. Harper leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. But hey, if you want to come over and try to make us surrender, you're welcome to give it a shot. Fair warning, though, we might not make it easy for you. The transmission ended with Harper still chuckling and shaking his head. On the Zephyrian flagship, Emperor Vexthul stared at the screen in shock. In 1,000 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to his ultimatum with laughter. Most begged for mercy. Some tried to negotiate. A few declared defiant speeches about dying with honor. But none had ever treated his threats as a joke. "This is unacceptable," the Emperor roared. "How dare they mock the might of our empire?" General Kextar shifted nervously. "Perhaps they do not understand our power, Your Majesty. Their primitive technology may not have detected our fleet." "Then we will show them," the Emperor said coldly. "Send word to all fleet commanders. We advance immediately. I want 3,000 ships in human space within the week. We will teach these laughing fools to respect the Zephyrian Empire." Back at Luna Station, Harper was fielding calls from commanders across human space. The reaction was the same everywhere. Confusion, amusement, and a strange kind of excitement that humans hadn't felt in generations. "Kyle, you've got to be kidding me," said Captain Lisa Monroe from her research ship far outside the solar system. "Someone actually declared war on us, like a real war?" "Apparently so," Harper replied. "They seem pretty serious about it too. Big fleet, lots of ships, the whole works." Lisa laughed. "Well, this should be interesting. When was the last time?" "Humans had a proper war, not counting the usual pirate nonsense, about 150 years ago," Harper said. "And that was just a civil dispute that got out of hand." "Think they know what they're getting into?" Lisa asked. Harper smiled. "Lisa, I don't think they have the slightest idea what they just started." Across human space, the news spread quickly, but instead of panic or fear, there was something else in the air. It was the same feeling humans got when faced with any interesting challenge, a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and the irresistible urge to see what would happen next. The Zephyrian Empire had just declared war on the one species in the galaxy that treated warfare as the ultimate form of creative problem-solving. War Commander Thekmor stood on the bridge of his massive battleship and felt proud. Behind him, 200 Zephyrian warships moved through space in perfect formation. Each ship was 5 times larger than anything the humans had built. Their weapons could destroy entire cities with a single shot. "Sir, we are approaching the edge of human space," reported his navigation officer. Thekmor nodded. This would be easy. The humans had no idea what real military power looked like. Soon, they would beg for mercy, just like all the others. "Begin." "Scanning for human defenses," he ordered. "I want to see how they plan to defend their pathetic worlds." The scanning officer worked at his console for several minutes. Then he looked up with confusion on his face. "Sir, I am detecting very few military ships. Most of what I see appears to be cargo vessels and small patrol craft." "Excellent," Thekmor said. "They are not even trying to fight. This will be over, quickly." But then something appeared on their screens that made everyone stop and stare. A single human ship was moving toward them. It was tiny compared to their battleships. It looked old and worn, like it had been flying through space for many years. "One ship?" Thekmor asked. "They send one ship against our entire fleet?" The human vessel came closer. It had no weapons that the Zephyrians could see. It looked more like a patrol boat than a warship. On the side, faded letters spelled out UES Wanderer. "Sir, the human ship is sending us a message," the communications officer reported. "Put it on screen," Thekmor commanded. The face of a young human male appeared on their view screen. He had short brown hair and was wearing a simple blue uniform. He was smiling like he was greeting old friends. "Hey there, folks," the human said cheerfully. "You must be the Empire guys Admiral Harper told us about. I'm Lieutenant Jake Sullivan. Welcome to human space." Thekmor was stunned. The human acted like this was a social visit instead of a military encounter. "Human, I am War Commander Thekmor of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed. Jake scratched his head. Well, that doesn't sound very friendly. How about we talk about this over some coffee? I just made a fresh pot and it's really good stuff from Earth. Coffee? Thekmore repeated. He had no idea what the human was talking about. Yeah, it's a drink, keeps you awake, tastes great. Perfect for long space trips, Jake explained. Look, I know you guys probably have your orders and all, but Kyle said I should at least offer before we get down to business. Thekmore's purple face turned darker with anger. Human, you face the might of the Zephyrian Empire. We have conquered 42 species. We have never been defeated. Surrender now or face destruction. Jake's smile faded slightly. Okay, I tried to be polite. But if you insist on doing this the hard way, I guess we can dance a little first. Fair warning, though. I haven't had a good fight in months, so I might be a bit rusty. Dance? Thekmore was getting more confused by the minute. What is this human talking about? It's just an expression, Jake said. Means we're going to fight. But hey, no hard feelings, right? This is just business. Thekmore had enough of this strange conversation. All ships target the human vessel. Prepare to fire. 200 Zephyrian warships turned their massive weapons toward the tiny human ship. Each weapon was powerful enough to vaporize the small craft instantly. Fire, Thekmore commanded. Thousands of energy beams shot through space toward Jake's ship, but somehow the little vessel wasn't there anymore. It had moved so quickly that the Zephyrian targeting systems couldn't track it. Where did it go? Thekmore shouted. Sir, the human ship is behind our formation, the scanner officer reported. Jake's voice came over the communication system again. Nice light show, guys, really impressive. But you might want to work on your aim. Thekmore spun around to look at his tactical display. The human ship was indeed behind them, weaving between his warships like it was playing some kind of game. All ships turn and engage the human vessel, he ordered. But as his ships began to turn, something impossible happened. The human ship started firing, but not with energy weapons like the Zephyrians used. Instead, it launched what looked like pieces of metal and rock. What kind of primitive weapons are those? Thekmore asked. His question was answered when the first piece of debris hit one of his ships. The impact was much stronger than it should have been. The metal fragment punched through the warship's armor like it was made of paper. Sir, that debris is moving at incredible speed, his weapons officer reported. The human must be using some kind of kinetic acceleration system. More pieces of debris flew from Jake's ship, each one hitting with devastating force. 3 Zephyrian warships were badly damaged before they could even return fire. Impossible, Thekmore muttered. How can such primitive weapons be so effective? Jake's voice came over the radio again, and he sounded like he was enjoying himself. You know, for advanced galactic empire, you guys sure don't adapt very quickly. Might want to work on that. The human ship spun and twisted through space in ways that hurt Thekmore's eyes to watch. It didn't move like any military vessel he had ever seen. Instead of following proper battle formations, it seemed to dance around his ships like it was putting on a show. Sir, the human is using our own ships as cover, his tactical officer reported. Every time we try to target him, he moves behind one of our vessels. Then fire anyway, Thekmore ordered. But sir, we might hit our own ships. Do it anyway. The Zephyrian fleet began firing wildly, trying to hit the small human ship, but Jake seemed to know exactly where each shot would go before it was fired. He twisted and turned through the chaos, and several times the Zephyrian ships ended up shooting each other by mistake. This is getting embarrassing, Jake said over the radio. You guys might want to consider a different career. Maybe farming, or something peaceful like that. Thekmore watched in horror as his perfect military formation fell apart. His ships were bumping into each other, shooting at shadows, and generally making fools of themselves. Meanwhile, the single human vessel continued to dart around them, launching its strange debris weapons with deadly accuracy. In less than an hour, half of Thekmore's fleet was either destroyed or too damaged to fight. His remaining ships were scattered and confused. And the human was still out there, still talking like this was all some kind of game. Okay, guys, I think that's enough for today, Jake announced. I've got to head back to base soon. My shift ends in a couple hours, and I promised my girlfriend I'd take her to dinner tonight. Retreat, Thekmore whispered. Sir? His communications officer asked. I said retreat, Thekmore shouted. All ships fall back immediately. The surviving Zephyrian vessels limped away from the battle as fast as they could go. Behind them, Jake's cheerful voice followed them through space. Hey, thanks for stopping by. This was fun. Tell your Emperor that if he wants to try again, we'll be here. And next time, maybe bring more ships. This was barely a warm-up. As his damaged fleet fled toward Empire space, Thekmore tried to understand what had just happened. One human ship had defeated half his fleet. One pilot had made fools of the mighty Zephyrian Empire. And the worst part was that the human had been having fun the entire time. Emperor Vexthul paced back and forth in his throne room like a caged animal. His purple skin had turned almost black with rage. War Commander Thekmore knelt before him, his head bowed in shame. You lost half your fleet to one human ship? The Emperor roared. One ship. Your Majesty, they do not fight like any species we have encountered before, Thekmore said quietly. Their tactics make no sense. They use garbage as weapons. They talk and joke during battle. They seem to enjoy fighting. You, Emperor, stopped pacing. Enjoy fighting? That is impossible. War is serious business. War is about power and fear and dominance. Not to humans, Your Majesty, Thekmore replied. To them, it seemed like some kind of game. Emperor Vexthul slammed his fist on his throne. Then we will show them this is no game. Send word to every fleet commander in the Empire. I want 8,000 ships sent to human space immediately. We will attack all their worlds at once. They cannot laugh when their cities are burning. Across the galaxy, the Zephyrian Empire began moving. Massive fleets gathered from dozens of star systems. The Emperor was putting everything he had into this war. No species had ever survived such an attack. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Harper sat in his office eating a sandwich. Commander Ryan Torres, his assistant, rushed in with urgent reports. Sir, our deep space sensors are picking up massive fleet movements, Ryan said. It looks like the entire Zephyrian Empire is heading our way. Harper took another bite of his sandwich. How many ships? Over 8,000, sir. They're coming from 4 different directions. They plan to hit Mars, Jupiter Station, the outer colonies, and Earth all at the same time. Harper nodded slowly. That's a lot of ships. Better order some extra pizza for the command center. This might run past dinner time. Ryan stared at his commander. Sir, aren't you worried? 8,000 ships is a huge number. Ryan, my boy, Harper said with a smile. You're thinking like them. You're counting ships and thinking that bigger numbers mean automatic victory. But humans don't work that way. He pressed a button on his desk. Attention all stations. This is Admiral Harper. Our new friends are coming back and they're bringing more friends with them. All units move to positions and prepare for guests, and remember, let's give them a warm welcome. Across human space, the response was immediate, but strange. Instead of panic or desperate preparations, there was something else in the air. Excitement. Humans hadn't had a real challenge in over a century, and they were eager to see what they could do. Captain Nina Walsh commanded a cargo ship called the Lucky Strike near Mars. When she received the alert, she grinned and called her crew together. Okay, people, we've got company coming, she announced. Time to show these Empire folks what a good old-fashioned cargo hauler can do. Her crew got to work with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for birthday parties. They began pulling panels off the ship's hull and rewiring systems that had nothing to do with cargo hauling. Engineer Pete Johnson was working at an asteroid mining station near Jupiter. When he heard about the approaching fleet, he rubbed his hands together with glee. Boys, we're about to turn this mining operation into something special, he told his team. Fire up the gravity generators and start moving those asteroids into position. We're going to give our visitors a physics lesson they'll never forget. Commander Steve Blake was leading a group of civilian ships near the outer colonies. His vessels looked old and harmless, but looks could be very deceiving when humans were involved. All right, everyone, Steve said over the radio. Time to Drop the disguises. Let's show them what we've really been building out here. The ships began changing. Panels slid away to reveal hidden weapons. Cargo bays opened to show missile systems. What had looked like peaceful merchant vessels suddenly became something much more dangerous. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was studying captured Zephyrian technology in her lab on Earth. She had been working day and night since the first battle, trying to understand how the Empire's weapons worked. Interesting, she muttered as she examined a piece of alien armor. Their technology is very advanced, but it's also very rigid. Everything is designed to work in one specific way. They don't seem to understand the concept of improvisation, she called Admiral Harper with her findings. Kyle, I think I know why that Jake fellow was able to beat them so easily. Their whole military system is based on intimidation and overwhelming force. They've never had to fight someone who fights back. Creatively. What do you mean? Harper asked. They're like a boxer who's only ever fought people who fall down after the first punch, Elena explained. They have no idea what to do when someone punches back. The first Zephyrian attack came at Mars. 500 enemy ships dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find a lightly defended colony world. Instead, they found Captain Nina Walsh waiting for them. Welcome to Mars, gentlemen, Nina announced over the radio. Hope you're ready for a party. Her cargo ship, which should have been no match for even one enemy vessel, suddenly sprouted weapons from every available surface. But these weren't normal weapons. Nina had turned her cargo holds into massive railgun systems that fired shipping containers at incredible speeds. Delivery service, she called out as metal containers smashed into enemy ships. Sign here, please. The containers weren't empty either. Some were filled with explosives. Others contained small fighter drones that swarmed out like angry bees. One container held nothing but glitter and paint, which spread across enemy ship hulls and made their sensors useless. At Jupiter, Pete Johnson's mining operation became something out of a nightmare. The Zephyrian fleet found themselves flying into a field of asteroids that seemed to move on their own. Gravity generators pushed and pulled the space rocks into perfect collision courses with enemy ships. Oops, sorry about that, Pete's voice came over the radio each time another enemy vessel was crushed by a floating mountain. These asteroids are so hard to control. Maybe you should watch where you're going. Near the outer colonies, Commander Steve Blake's merchant fleet revealed its true nature. The ships transformed like metal flowers blooming in reverse, bristling with experimental weapons that the Empire had never seen before. Surprise, Steve announced as his ships opened fire with plasma cannons, gravity bombs, and something that made enemy vessels turn inside out. Bet you weren't expecting that. But the strangest thing about all these battles wasn't the weapons or the tactics. It was the sounds coming from the human ships. The Zephyrians intercepted radio transmissions filled with laughter, jokes, and music. Some human crews were singing during the fighting. Others were making bets on how many enemy ships they could destroy. This is impossible, War Commander Thekmore reported to his Emperor. They treat warfare like entertainment. They seem to be having fun while they destroy our fleets. Emperor Vexthul listened to the reports with growing horror. His massive attack was falling apart. Thousands of his ships were being destroyed by humans who joked and laughed while they fought. How can they be so effective while acting so casual? He demanded. I do not know, Your Majesty, Thekmore replied. But I am beginning to think we have made a terrible mistake. Emperor Vexthul stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him, the last 2,000 ships of his once mighty empire moved through space toward Earth. His purple skin looked pale and tired. In just a few weeks, humans had destroyed most of his fleet using tactics that made no sense. Your Majesty, his communications officer said quietly. We are approaching the human homeworld. The Emperor nodded. This was his final chance. If he could destroy Earth, the humans would have to surrender. All species valued their homeworld above everything else. Begin the attack, he commanded. Show no mercy. But as his ships moved toward Earth, something appeared on their sensors that made everyone stop and stare. The human defense fleet was waiting for them, not hiding behind the planet or scattered in panic, but arranged in perfect formation as if they were welcoming guests to a party. Admiral Harper's face appeared on the Emperor's view screen. He was sitting comfortably in his command chair, drinking coffee from a mug that said, World's okayest Admiral. Your Majesty, Harper said with his usual smile. Nice to finally meet you face to face. I have to say, you've given us quite a workout these past few weeks. Human, you faced the last fleet of the Zephyrian Empire, the Emperor declared. Surrender now and I will make your deaths quick. Harper chuckled. You know, Your Majesty, that's the same thing you said when you had 10,000 ships. Now you're down to 2,000 and you're still making threats. I admire the confidence, but maybe it's time to reconsider your approach. The Emperor's anger flared. We still outnumber you 4-1. Your defeat is certain. Maybe, Harper said, taking another sip of coffee. But before we get started, I have to ask, do you actually know anything about humans? I mean, did you do any research before you decided to declare war on us? We know everything we need to know, the Emperor replied coldly. You are a primitive species that has barely left your home system. Harper laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. Oh, Your Majesty, you really didn't do your homework, did you? Betty, show him the files. Lieutenant Betty Collins appeared on screen next to Harper. She held up a data pad and began reading in a cheerful voice. Let's see here. Humans have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, and plagues that killed half our population. We invented nuclear weapons and used them on ourselves just to see what would happen. We've been fighting wars with each other for over 10,000 years, using everything from sharp sticks to planet-cracking bombs. She flipped to another page. Oh, and here's a fun fact. We're the only species in the galaxy that figured out how to split the atom and immediately thought, hey, let's make a weapon out of this. Most species use atomic power for energy. We turned it into the biggest explosives in history. Emperor Vexthul felt a cold feeling growing in his stomach. Harper leaned forward in his chair. Your Majesty, you declared war on a species that survived by fighting everything. Our environment, our diseases, our predators, and most importantly, each other. We've spent our entire history learning how to win fights against impossible odds. It matters not, the Emperor said, but his voice sounded less confident than before. You are still outnumbered. True, Harper agreed. But here's the thing about humans. We don't really think in terms of fair fights. We think in terms of winning. The battle began, and immediately the Emperor realized something was wrong. The human ships moved with a coordination that made their earlier battles look like training exercises. What he had thought was chaos was actually carefully planned strategy. Captain Tony Martinez led a squadron of ships that shouldn't have existed according to Zephyrian intelligence. They appeared from behind Earth's moon like ghosts, striking at the Empire's flanks with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Surprise, Your Majesty, Tony's voice came over the radio. Did you really think 300 ships was all we had? We've been building in secret for decades. Hope you don't mind the deception. Suddenly, the space around Earth filled with human vessels. They came from hidden bases, from disguised asteroids, from places the Empire had never thought to look. The Zephyrians found themselves surrounded by a fleet twice the size of their own. Impossible, the Emperor whispered. Our intelligence said you had only 300 ships. Your intelligence was looking at our patrol fleet, Harper explained, calmly. The ships we use for everyday stuff like chasing pirates and rescue missions. Did you really think that was our entire military? The Emperor watched in horror as his remaining ships were systematically destroyed. But it wasn't just the size of the human fleet that shocked him. It was how they fought. Every human ship seemed to know exactly what every other human ship was doing. They moved like parts of a single organism, covering each other, sharing targets, coordinating attacks with perfect timing. How is this possible? He demanded. No species fights with such coordination. Practice, Harper replied simply. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, Your Majesty. We know every trick, every strategy, every possible way to win a battle. When we finally decided to work together instead of against each other, we got pretty good at it. The Emperor's flagship shuddered as human weapons hit its shields. His crew was panicking, but he barely noticed. He was too busy staring at the tactical display, watching his empire die. Why? He asked quietly. Why do you fight like this? Why do you laugh while you destroy us? Harper's expression became almost pitying. Your Majesty, you want to know why? We laugh? It's because this isn't even a real war for us. This is just Tuesday. The Emperor didn't understand. You declared war on a species that figured out nuclear weapons and immediately used them on themselves. Twice, just to see what would happen, Harper continued. We've survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and our own stupidity. We've spent our entire history fighting each other with everything from sticks to planet crackers. Harper leaned back in his chair. You know what the really funny part is? We were actually starting to get bored. It's been over a century since we had a good fight. You showing up was the most excitement we've had in generations. The Emperor's ship was now surrounded by human vessels. His weapons were destroyed, his shields were failing, and his crew was unconscious or fled. He was alone on his bridge, facing defeat unlike anything in his empire's history. So what happens now? He asked. Harper smiled, but it was a kind smile, not cruel. Now you have a choice, Your Majesty. You can keep trying to fight us, or you can accept that maybe, just maybe, you picked the wrong species to mess with. And if I surrender? Then we'll help you rebuild, Harper said simply. We'll teach you better ways to solve problems than conquering everyone you meet. We'll show you what cooperation looks like instead of domination. The Emperor looked around his ruined bridge. His 1,000-year empire was gone, destroyed in a few weeks by a species he had thought primitive. I surrender, he said quietly. Harper nodded. Good choice, Your Majesty. Welcome to the neighborhood. I think you're going to like it here once you get used to how we do things. Later, Commander Rachel Stone was writing her report on the war. She noted that 17 other galactic powers had quietly canceled their expansion plans toward human space. Word traveled fast among civilizations smart enough to pay attention. The war that was supposed to last days had ended in weeks, but not the way anyone expected. And somewhere in a small restaurant on Earth, Admiral Harper was having dinner with a former emperor, teaching him how to play poker and wondering what interesting challenge would show up next.